Are we ready, Andrew?
Almost.
Almost.
Okay, you're live.
All right, and we're back from closed session at 6:01. No action was taken during closed session. At this point, I'd like to invite everyone to stand and salute for the Pledge of Allegiance. Stand. Salute to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. At this time, I'd like to invite comments and announcements by board members with Sharon. Do you have any
Hello.
comments, announcements, or?
The only thing I'd like to say is I see that there's a lot of people that are attending with us today, so welcome. I'm glad to see that we have many guests.
Bill, do you have any comments or announcements to make?
I have none, thank you.
Thank you. Pamela, do you have any comments or announcements?
Yes, I do. Thank you. I'd like to just thank OETA and the CSEA staff who did reach out to me and to the board regarding the safe reopening of our schools. So I do appreciate your input, and I just want to just acknowledge and appreciate that. Thank you.
And Jessica, do you have any comments or announcements?
Yeah, to piggyback onto the last comment, I did my best to reply to every person that emailed me regarding the safe reopening of schools, in addition to other topics that we have going on in our district. And I apologize if I didn't get back to anybody. I did my best. So thank you, and I appreciate your opinions.
And just to piggyback on Pamela and Jessica's sentiments and Sharon's welcome, I apologize that I wasn't able to get back to anybody. I was literally getting emails as I was at work yesterday, and yeah, I was in the middle of texting everyone else, and so I hope in the discussion session coming up after comments and announcements that we'll be able to address all of the questions that you have. Spencer, do you have any comments or announcements that you'd like to share with us? Spencer, you're on mute.
Thank you, Madam President. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us this evening. I too have received a lot of questions and concerns from parents and staff, and I too have tried to make sure that I am replying to and taking the phone calls and all those people who are reaching out to give us their opinion. We appreciate all those families and staff that have completed the surveys. I've shared those surveys with the results of the survey with our board, so that later on in tonight we can have a thorough conversation about the state of which model and program we'd like to continue with for the remainder of the year. I'd also like to do a huge shout out to our staff, who are continually doing such a great job under a lot of duress to continue to educate and assist and support our families, our students, and each other as we go through this pandemic. It hasn't been easy for anyone, but I would like to let you know that on behalf of my staff in the district office, and I don't like to speak for the board, but I will in this case say that they are very concerned about all of our families, all of our staff, and they care a great deal. And I've had a number of conversations with them as well as we seek resolution and the best solution for everyone involved tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Spencer. Andrew, would you like to share any comments or announcement?
Yeah, I just wanted to say welcome everybody. And we did our a month ago or so. We had an interview with the Fitch rating board, which is one of the rating boards that controls our credit rating. This was sort of a extraordinary thing that happened. Typically, I don't get an interview or a request for information from Fitch, but we did the interview, did the request for information, and after the interview, the Fitch board made the determination that they weren't going to be changing our credit rating or credit score. So that's extremely good news. They were looking at us because they were looking at downgrading our agency because of our financial situation. So that was real positive news. I know it sounds kind of dry, but I was really excited. So that's it.
That is good news. Thank you, Andrew. Janet, do you have any comments or announcements?
I have a couple announcements I'd like to start off with, and then I'll make a couple comments. So on my announcements, I just kind of want to let you know that February 23rd, we have our first Hmong Promotoris activity that's going on. Part of the DOJ work is that we are to create affinity groups, and our middle schools have been doing them on Friday afternoons, and our elementary groups have been having a challenge with getting that started. And we're still going to talk about it some more in terms of how to grow it. But our first one did get started. So kudos to the principals for really hanging in there and trying to figure out how we can get the affinity group started. And then on March 2nd, we have a parent training coming up that's talking about how to encourage their kids to log in online. This goes back to when we did our continuity plan in the beginning of the year and submitted it. And one of the things that we had found out from our community members was frustration on how to get kids to log in, because some parents are working and they can't be there at the moment. So kind of helping give parents some strategies of what they can do to get their kids online. And March 3rd, we have a community meeting, and that also is a DOJ requirement that we do 2 community meetings a year. So that will be going on. And we, on March 1st, have the Supportive School Climate Advisory Committee going on. And I know we have 2 board members that will be joining us for that meeting, and that will be our second meeting with this group that year. And just wanted to let you know about those dates. And then I just want to say, I concur with Dr. Holton. I concur with going out into the different schools and talking to the teachers individually and hearing the heartwarming stories of some of the different things they do to go above and beyond to make sure that we're getting our kids connected and online. I hear it from the principals a lot, all kinds of stories of how they're going out to school, to the homes and trying to get kids online. And I just think that everybody, the human spirit, everybody's really been kind of trying to pitch in and figure out how do we make it work. Everybody's struggling. We all know that. But boy, when you see the teachers and some of the creative things they've done and some of the things the principals are doing, and they're not giving up on kids. They're going back to those homes and getting those parents to understand and help them with their barriers so they can get to school. So kudos to everybody for the great work they're doing and the collaborative effort district-wide of what's going on.
Janet,
Yes.
when is the training for how to get your kids online? When is that going to be?
That is going to be
The
on
first
March
meeting,
2nd.
I think it's the first meeting.
March 2nd from 7 to 8, and we'll be getting that up on the website this week so that we can make sure that's getting advertised.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Kimberly, do you have any announcements or comments?
I do. First off, the significant disproportionality comprehensive coordinated early intervening services plan, or the CSES, which I did a presentation on in December and asked the board to approve it, was submitted to the state. They gave us some feedback, and then we got our official approval this week. And that was really exciting. And we're earlier than many districts. This means that we have the go-ahead to start implementing all the activities in the plan. On a lighter note, it was incredible to have Conrad the Crawdad come visit the preschool, which was, if you haven't seen him, he is an amazing crawdad with this tall black hat, and he is helping our students understand with the tobacco swag that they need to stay away from tobacco and vaping. And you know, I don't know at the other schools, but the preschool, he was mobbed. We have lots of pictures that'll be up on our website if you want to see that, but it's really a great thing to have in our district. And I want to thank Conrad for coming.
Thank you, Kimberly. At this time, we'd like to open comment session to interested parties who wish to speak on matters that are school related. Comments or questions may be emailed to backpack@ocesd.net. Please encourage your first and last name. Comments and questions will be received, will be read to the record and addressed during the meeting. During the comments received without the sender's name cannot be shared during the meeting.
And Sandra,
Yes.
also, if people who are in attendance today would like to make a comment, if they raise their hand on the Zoom, I will do my best to have them speak in turn as well.
Thank you, Andrew. I know this is an updated version of the app that we've been using.
Yeah.
Do
So
we
sorry, go ahead.
do we have any raised hands?
I don't see any right now.
And Madam President, I have 8 emails to read into the record at this time. So I'll go ahead and start. This is from Heather Sanzoni, who is a 4th grade teacher at Stanford Avenue Elementary. I have a couple of concerns I'd like to address with you at tonight's meeting. I have concerns about reopening safely and about the projected calendar for next year. I am concerned about reopening fully. I know we all want to go back to normal, but if we are still having staff and board meetings virtually, how can we have school fully open? Are there going to be air purifiers in the classrooms? Will the rooms be cleaned? Are we not socially distancing them? Will masks go away? I'm concerned with the students, especially wearing masks all day long. It affects their breathing, and I'm concerned about them being able to learn to their ability in a room with masks on for that long. We do not know the long-term side effects of children wearing masks for this long. In regards to the projected calendar, I find it ridiculous to get rid of the winter break in February. I feel that changing this intermittent break does not support the overall health and wellness of staff and students. When considering the immense stressors and unpredictability that has become constant in Butte County and doesn't appear to go away anytime soon, we need these breaks in order to provide the best education for our students. I understand that we share the bus system with the high school. Could this be renegotiated? Is there funding for us to have our own busing those days? This break in February is the only break where we can have self-care. It is the only break not surrounded by a holiday. It is before testing so we can replan if necessary to help support our students. I like a breath of fresh air that we all need. It is also a perk to working at OCESD. We get a special break the other districts do not get. Thank you very much for taking the time to read this. Best regards, Heather Sanzoni, 4th grade teacher, Stanford Avenue Elementary. Second message is from Amy Nelms, who is a Stanford Avenue teacher, 2nd grade. Thank you for taking the time to read my email and for your concern for the best interest of our students. Returning to a full-time in-person learning model after spring break is not in the best interest of the safety of students or staff members. Our classrooms are not large enough, nor have proper ventilation to accommodate up to 30 students and maintain physical distancing. This is not safe. Students have already had several changes in their learning model in the last year. Consistency is so important for our students, and switching their learning format and possibly their teacher, again for 7 weeks, would be more detrimental than beneficial. While hybrid or distance learning models may not be ideal for some students, they have developed a relationship with their teacher and peers, mastered class routines, and are in the learning model their family has chosen for a reason. In the midst of a global pandemic and so much fear and uncertainty, school needs to be a place of safety and consistency for our students. They do not need more changes. I'm currently a distance learning teacher and have 28 second grade students from 3 different schools within the district. I've had 5 new students join since December. My students are working incredibly hard and have a positive attitude about school. They are learning so many digital skills they wouldn't have had the time or necessity to learn if we were in person learning. They are learning great problem solving, communication, flexibility, persistence, and resilience. If we return to full-time in-person learning, I will lose all but 3 of my students. Over half will return to different schools and others to their former teachers at Stanford. Building relationships and learning new routines take time. With only a few weeks of school left, I believe students have the greatest opportunity to learn by staying in their current learning model. I'm excited for the day we can all safely return to school. I don't believe it is now. Thank you, Amy Nelms, Stanford Avenue Elementary, second grade teacher. Number 3, to whom it may concern, first I want to thank you for taking the time to read this and consider this the plea of this letter. My name is Emily Lamb and I'm currently teaching 6th grade on distance learning. It is with heavy heart that I ask you to consider keeping this school year as it is for the remainder of the school year. My wish is that everything can go back to normal as soon as possible. However, I do not believe that is the correct choice at this time. I am concerned for my health and the health of my family, the safety and health of students and colleagues, and that students will continue to face more challenges that will be detrimental to their learning. I am concerned for my health and the health of my family if we return to a full-time model. Luckily, I'm fully vaccinated. However, there is no research on whether or not I can still carry COVID-19, which means that if I'm exposed to someone with COVID, I may never know that I have been infected, but I can still pass the illness on to my family. My family and I have chosen to be completely isolated. We get groceries delivered and we only see my parents as they help with childcare. I have a 6-month-old baby. Navigating raising my first child through a pandemic has been a feat more challenging than I ever thought I would face. There is little information on the long-term effects on COVID for children. We do know that children do not exhibit the same symptoms as adults, thankfully. However, we do not know how having COVID will affect their little lungs later in life. I do not want to risk my daughter becoming ill and having a negative outcome for the rest of her life. For this reason, I'm concerned for myself and my family for returning to work. I'm not just concerned for my health, for my safety though. My job is to protect students. I'm concerned about students if we return to a full-time schedule. I'm working as a distance learning teacher right now, which means technically I work for ISHE. Every grade level at ISHE has had to go on quarantine, every single one. I just have to assume that if we have a classroom full of students, this will only be exacerbated. I believe that if we go back to full-time, we will just continue to go on quarantine. Not only is the back and forth of full-time school to quarantining difficult and challenging for students, but there's an added level of fear when you know someone in your class has COVID. If my daughter was in school right now, I know that I would want to keep her home so that she won't have to worry about going to school every day. School should be a safe place, free of fear and worry. If students are back in the classroom full-time, I'm concerned that there will be many students worried about their health and safety on a daily basis. Our students have already been through so much change this year. My students have had 3 to 5 different teachers depending on the route they have taken that they took this year. I was on maternity leave for the beginning of the school year, and when I returned, the first question they all asked was, "Will you be our teacher for the rest of the year?" I assured them that I would. I assured them that they would not have to have any more change. However, with the upcoming decision to possibly return to full-time in-person school, I'm concerned that I may not continue to be their teacher. At the beginning, I wondered whether or not we would form a strong bond over distance learning, and I am pleased to report that it is entirely possible to create positive relationships with students during distance learning. It was hard to revamp our curriculum and teaching styles to teach online, but I feel like we've been extremely successful in creating an educationally rich learning environment while keeping our students safe. It is with everything that I have no, beg you to consider keeping school the way it is. Let's finish this year with a hybrid distance learning model and look forward to in-person school next year. I hope that this letter finds you safe and happy, and I hope that we all continue to be safe and healthy in our teaching and learning roles. Thank you, Emily Lamb, 6th grade teacher. Excuse me. Letter number 4, Shelley Stewart. Dear board members, I'm very disappointed in the way the district created their survey, which will be used for determining if the schools are to return to full enrollment. The survey is not asking parents if they want to continue with hybrid for the remainder of the year or full-time. The survey goes straight to full-time or distance learning. The district will come out of this survey saying that the parents want to come back full-time, but that may not be accurate. Parents would probably rather be in person than on distance learning, but many of the parents that have contacted me because they were confused by the survey say they want to stay on hybrid for the remainder of the year. They do not want to interrupt the household once again. They want us to focus on how we can go full-time in the fall and remain safely open without so many quarantine classrooms. I already stated my preference to stay with the hybrid because we are following the current CDC requirements to open the school, and it will cause less disruption. Please recommend throwing out the survey and send a new one that asks if students want to remain on hybrid or go full-time. Thank you, Shelley Stewart, SDC teacher, Stanford Avenue. Number 5 is from a parent, Yelena Agarkov. Hello, I'm a parent of a student at Ofer Elementary. Once again, I'm writing to ask the board to please return our schools back to a traditional full-time schedule. Here are some of my reasons. 1, even though we experienced the unprecedented schedule changes, we have to remember that the current schedule is not the norm. Majority of parents would not mind another change if it means getting kids back to school full-time as soon as possible. 2, parents that are worried for the safety of their kids have a choice to do online only. Parents are in the best position to decide what's best for their kids, so please let parents make the decision. 3, teacher staff were given priority access to vaccinations over many other vulnerable groups. Millions of essential employees have been working full-time through the entire pandemic with far less protection and greater chance of exposure. Many private schools have been open full-time successfully without vaccinations and with far less funding. 4, all top national and state agencies, including CDC, have advised that schools need to reopen. 5, the virus is not going away and here to stay at some levels. Same excuses that keep our schools closed now can be used a year from now. Our kids don't have any unions, funding, or political backing their interest, yet they are paying the ultimate sacrifice with the school closures. I ask this board to truly consider the needs of the children above all others. Thank you for all your hard work, Yelena Agarkov. Muna Kalarko, teacher, Stanford Avenue. Dear members of the school board, I'm writing to encourage you to decide to continue with our current state of offering hybrid, independent study, and distance learning. I recommend this for several reasons. The first is that our students have had so much upheaval and change this year, between starting on distance learning, moving to whichever model their parents selected, and for some being on quarantine. They have just now finally gotten into a routine. They understand what they are expected to do, and most are doing it. As teachers, we have worked hard to develop relationships with our students, yet those relationships face the potential of being torn apart. At Stanford Avenue School, some of our primary classrooms have 29 students in them. Students will have to be moved to another class to ensure social distancing and an equitable teaching environment. This will create a whole domino effect in the primary grades, adding trauma to children who have faced trauma every year of their educational career. My current second graders have never had a normal year between the spillway collapse, Camp Fire, North Complex Fire, and COVID-19 pandemic. They've had to deal with trauma on an unprecedented level. Now we're considering adding more. In fact, Chico Unified School District just opted to remain in a hybrid model, citing consistency as their main reason. Second, it is extremely difficult, if not possible, to be socially distanced in a classroom with 30 students. All of our upper classrooms will have to reconfigure. Does the district have the resources for this? Do we really want to remove the materials from a classroom that make it unique? Things such as reading corners, tables to meet in small groups, etc. Third, we need to think about the health and the well-being for our whole community. Until we have herd immunity, either due to vaccination or having survived COVID-19, it would be irresponsible to endanger our population. We have worked so hard and long to keep people safe. It would be foolish to throw away all of our hard work when our goal is in sight. Finally, going back after spring break will only give us 9 weeks of school. It will take at least 2 weeks, if not longer, to become accustomed to the new classroom or routine. The last week of school, students are checked out and looking forward to summer. That leaves only 6 weeks at best of quality teaching time. We are all eager to go back to normal, but we should not rush back until we know it's safe. Doing so prematurely could cause a resurgence of the virus and possibly affect the following school year. Better that we provide consistency by continuing to offer the hybrid model, distance learning, and independent study. We should be putting our energy into planning for next year so that we can provide targeted instruction and intervention. We want to start the new year right by having the plan and resources teachers will need to not only get their students caught up, but also excelling both academically and social emotionally. Respectfully, Muna Calarco, second grade teacher, Stanford Avenue. Dear OCESD board, it is with a heavy heart that I feel I must write to you about some upcoming choices that are going to be made. My name is Aaron Jackson, and I'm one of the 2 6th grade distance learning teachers. It has come to my attention that the district and the board are considering reopening the school utilizing a different model that we are currently featuring. This model may result in the dissolution of the distance learning program. I feel as though if this program is abolished, it will have terrible consequences for many of my students. COVID-19 is a devastating illness that has taken hold of our community in a way that we could have never imagined. With that being said, it's very clear, based on the high amount of spread, that this community is not prepared to return to life as normal. This includes going back to school full-time. Our district features a diverse array of students with many different needs, whether those be educational, mental, emotional, or physical. Many of these students, although not ideal, need the distance learning program to persist for the sake of their well-being. Through the months that we have been open, all schools have seen a closure on one level or another. This is either due to students, staff, or family members, or them both contracting the COVID-19 virus. I could not imagine the amount of anxiety that a student or teacher faces knowing that they have been exposed and waiting to see whether illness comes from that exposure. Even though I have been fully vaccinated, I would still feel this type of anxiety if I was put in this position, and the added fear of whether or not I would pass the virus to my husband and 3 children, the oldest of which has also been 100% virtual all year. I feel as though our community is much worse now than it was when we initially decided to close schools last March, making me wonder how we can even consider opening with the community spread so devastatingly high. I understand the want and desire to go back in person learning. As a distance learning teacher, I know it is not best for everyone, especially those who do not have the support at home. But at what cost are we willing to force the reopening of schools? Distance learning must remain an option for those students and staff who need it to exist, at least until the community can come together and do what is necessary to slow the spread and make it safe for everyone's return. Thank you for taking the time to read and consider my concerns. Aaron Jackson, 6th grade teacher. Dear members of the school board, I'm writing to encourage you to decide to continue with our current state of offering hybrid model, independent study, distance learning, and recommend this for several reasons. The first is that our students have so much upheaval and change this year between starting on distance learning, moving to whichever model their parents selected. I believe I've already read this one. And that was from Muna Calarco. Andrew.
Yeah, so there's one more. I'll just go ahead and read it.
Okay,
It's from Leanne Mello.
Go ahead.
My question is regarding the return of traditional in-person instruction for OCESD students. Has our district discussed or looked into the possibility of a 4-1, trying to see how that's possibility of a 4-to-1 day in-person instruction DL model like other schools are using with success? Monday through Thursday, in-person instruction days, and Friday distance learning. Google Meet teacher instruction day. Thank you, Leanne Mello. And then I have 2 people with their hands up and one attendee with their hand up, our panelist. Jessica, do you want to say something before I get to the other comments?
I have a letter that I'd like to read as well.
Okay, why don't you do that? And then Faru and Angie Marino, be ready to go. I will let you talk as soon as it's your turn.
Okay, this letter came from a second grade teacher at Ofer Elementary School. Dear board members, I'm writing this email to you to express how I feel about the decision of going back to school or not. I strongly believe, and research supports, that children need to be back in school. I'm asking that we go back to school full time with all of our students in class with us Monday through Thursday. I'm also suggesting that we still have Fridays as a planning day and our DOJ assignments. However, that being said, the district needs to give us clear guidelines and expectations for a safe reopening. All schools should have the same guidelines and expectations, and we need time to implement those and get them in place before we go back full time. We should be able to do all of that and have our kids back after spring break. Thank you for considering my thoughts.
Jessica,
Yes.
who was that from?
This sender would like to remain anonymous. It's a second grade teacher at Ofer.
Thank you.
All right. Faru, you are now unmuted. If you want to unmute your microphone, it's your turn to talk.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. If you speak up a little bit more, that'd be helpful, but we can hear you.
Okay. Is that any better?
Yeah, I think we can all hear you.
Thank you. Hello, and thank you to the board tonight, and thank you for taking the time to listen to this hastily written letter. I was going to send it in, but I didn't have time. Please excuse errors and run-on sentences. Although I wanted to write a detailed and data-filled letter tonight to give you all facts that you could look over yourself before this meeting actually occurred, I don't have that. I've either gotten home late, as I work late in the classroom, or I leave early to attend to my kids, as many teachers are parents as well, and we need to actually take care of our children as well, as we hope our families do. I became a teacher to work with children in the community and to figure out how we could best, as a district, meet the needs of our entire population, not just some who may have the easiest time interacting with schools. We all know it's very difficult to get input from parents in our district. It has been for years. That hasn't changed. For years, my goal was to reach out and help whatever school I was at in my district to get as many students in the classroom, taking walking field trips to get kids in the classroom. I want to be with kids in the classroom. That's how we can meet their needs. Right now, we only get to be with some of our students 2 days a week, and I'm looking forward to the day where I can again have all of my students in my classroom every day. Not only that, I miss the interaction with the students and families that I'm now seeing struggling. So when I say I do not think the students should return to 100% school setting after break, it's not because I don't think it is best for kids. It's not because I want my life to be hard like it has been, like a lot of our lives has been hard, working the extra hours we have since March 13th, 2020. We're tired, as many of us are, for working all those extra hours, day and night, all through the day, running, not sitting, often not eating lunch. We want the students to be back in, but it is not the time. We are here for students. The students who I think would most benefit for coming back to school in session it would be from those students who around the country and the state are actually on distance learning now, and it appears that they might be able to remain on distance learning. Many of those students have not shown up at all for a lot of their sessions. But if we go back, those kids who might need help the most would remain DL and remain not getting the help that we need most. What are we doing in this district? These are the questions I have for the board. Since I didn't have time to include my data, who returned the survey? Was it a balanced, complete survey? The parents that I spoke to, a few who could not attend, others said they would listen later but did not feel comfortable writing a letter. They do not feel comfortable in the school setting, and it takes a lot of interaction from me to make them feel comfortable to actually communicate with me. I've been asking the district for years, not just now, how can we best meet the needs of all of our students, not just those that are extremely lucky, like my kids, to have parents who care about them and do what's best for them in the school setting. Many of the parents that I have want to do what's best, but really need some additional help. Another question I have, what research was done to decide to come back at this time midway through the year? In my class, the few parents I know who have who want their children to come back full-time are the children who are doing quite well. And I really want to support their need for their children to be back full-time. Absolutely. However, as teachers, we know we cannot just help those students who are at a higher level and higher achieving. We have been committed and we gave our word that we would help all of the children that come to us. And it's important that every teacher give time to those students who are struggling more. I am concerned that if our students come back all together at one time, we're not going to get as much teaching done as it seemed. Although there's amazing teachers in this district, many of them seem superhero-ish. I know that even those teachers would struggle with kids who have not been in school most of the year and are now here, or all of them at once, not even mentioning actual health issues with the things that were mentioned from other letters with COVID. Now, I have amazingly sweet kids in my class this year at Stanford. I'm very lucky, but even my students have struggled each time we add a new student. I have added and changed my schedule many times this year. And although I'm quite delighted with the growth we have made, it is nowhere near what would normally be made this year. And those students who are distance learning are hardly making growth at all. What are we doing for those most needy students? I have to say this before I end. I completely agree with those parents I've heard who want to make their own choices. I'm grateful that you as a district is allowing those parents to make that choice. They're the parents. However, I am not sure what type of education the students will get if they do come back to school full-time, and how they're going to actually get more education when we're trying to provide an education to all the other students who are now added to our classrooms at the same time. I think Chico Unified was wise when they decided to make the rest of the year continue as they started, providing some consistency to the students who have hardly gotten anything in years. I prod you, board. I didn't have time. I know you're busy. Thank you so much for those of you listening to us to stay hybrid for the rest of the year so we can plan so everybody, every last student can come back and get what they need, and we can be in person with all of them when we start the next year. Thank you again. Faru Molina, current third grade Stanford teacher since 1995 at every single school at OCSD.
All right. Thank you, Faru. And now Angie Marino, I'm going to allow you to talk and go ahead and unmute.
Hi, my name is Angie, and I wrote a letter yesterday. Apparently, I didn't send it out to the email address that is read aloud, so I'd like to read it now. I am a parent of a kindergartner and a second grader at Stanford Elementary, and I just want to say we love Stanford. We love our teachers. We love our admin. We've just had a great experience there, and everyone has worked so hard, especially this year, to support us and all of the kids. I was also honored to be involved in the reopening committee this past summer. I've been highly involved in our children's educational process, volunteering in the classroom weekly until this year, obviously. I'm also a licensed marriage and family therapist. Most days I'm at home with our kids, but I do work 2 days a week in my private practice. My theoretical orientation as a therapist, and therefore as a parent, because it kind of all melds together, comes mostly from the attachment theory, and therefore most of my concerns and opinions in this letter will be in line with our human need for connection, healthy relationships, and support. I believe we need to return to a 5-day-a-week school schedule. The reasons for this include student safety, academic progress, and overall family success. I also have concerns about a 5-day-a-week school schedule. These reasons are developmentally inappropriate expectations for students, stress because of yet another schedule change, which I've heard mentioned many times, an increased risk of cohort quarantines, which could bring even more instability to routines and schedules. So student safety has taken a back seat this year. Most child abuse and neglect reports come from school staff. And as a therapist working with trauma people, I know this firsthand. People with trauma, I know this firsthand. Excuse me. Many children, especially in our community, find safety and stability at school. I have had clients who are now adults who have become healthy and productive members of society because of their ability to go to school as a child and escape from the horrors of home. School essentially saved their lives. It breaks my heart to think about the students who are enduring these realities. Research by Public Health, and in my letter, I included the links to the California Public Health articles that came out a bit ago, have shown that children are less likely to contract COVID. And so they're like, not just that they are asymptomatic, but that they don't get it. Of course, some kids do, but that most kids don't because they don't have as many receptors as we do to these SARS viruses. It feels like we have sacrificed our children's safety for a risk that is very low. Obviously, this research is new and we didn't know this about children, especially a year ago. But now that we know, we should act accordingly and provide safety for our most vulnerable population, our at-risk children. It is clear that academic progress is suffering. I am part of my children's distance learning days, especially our kindergartner, and often our teacher is having to take class time to help students who have little or no parental support at home. Many parents have to work full time, so young children are left with grandparents or siblings who are not able to support students. Paper packets are also often not picked up, and students are left at home without the tools they need to complete their work and practice their skills. This breaks my heart knowing how important and foundational kindergarten is to a student's entire school career. Our community dwells under the poverty line. This is demonstrated by the district's free lunch qualifications. Many households need all adults working to make ends meet. Children not being in school has severely affected this and put families at risk of increased economic stress. Along with my opinion that we need to return to a 5-day school week, I have some concerns about this. Both of our teachers have expressed concerns about having to adhere to social distancing rules that will make, especially kindergartens, social learning difficult or impossible. They are also concerned with how this will affect academic learning. So much of school is social learning. This often makes way for success in academic learning. Children also should not be expected to remember or adhere to many social distancing rules and regulations. One of the largest indicators that child abuse, especially emotional abuse at the school level, may occur is developmentally unrealistic expectations for children. It worries me that adults who have been asked to enforce these rules will become weary and end up using harsh language or shaming language to enforce these rules that kids shouldn't be expected to adhere to, which can be damaging for children. While another schedule change this year will be doable, it will also add stress to families. Humanity thrives on routine. The constant changes this year have caused great stress to our family. I worry about families who do not have the support for childcare and the economic ability to have one parent at home like we do. Their stress must have been exponential compared to ours, and ours has been great. This has also caused stress for our teachers and our admin and their respective families. Our children have had one episode of quarantine since moving to the hybrid model. It meant changing work, school, and childcare plans in a short period of time, which caused great stress. With class sizes doubling and the need to quarantine a whole cohort, siblings and teachers each time there's a positive case will likely cause statistically more occasions of quarantine. This not only brings stress to families, but also to staff and administration. In conclusion, I do believe that because of student safety, academic progress, and overall family success, we should return to a 5-day school week. While I believe this, I also have some concerns that a 5-day school week may cause developmentally inappropriate expectations for students, stress because of another schedule change, and an increased risk of cohort quarantines. Our family is privileged and could carry on with the hybrid model and be successful this year. And truthfully, we would prefer that because of less changes. However, in this time, that privilege feels terrible, knowing that the majority of our families in our community are suffering. We are willing to risk the concerns and the stresses stated above for the greater good of our community, with the hopes that the district, teachers, and administration will work together to mitigate these concerns. Please consider allowing children to return to school 5 days a week. And I would just like to end with saying, I'm just so concerned that that the poor will continue to get poorer. This is a huge stress on the least of these in our community. And I believe that this should be highly considered. Thank you so much.
All right. I don't see any more hands, and I do not see any more emails.
Andrew, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes. I just, in our question and answer, Lori Maturino stated that she'd like me to read the email that she sent to the board last week. So I'll go ahead and read that into the record at this time, if that's okay, Madam President.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Dear OCESD board members, I'm writing to share with you some of my thoughts and concerns. I'm concerned about the reopening of schools. While I'm excited about the prospect of reopening and having all my students full-time, I'm extremely concerned about the safety of our students, teachers, and staff. The CDC reports of the virus transmission rate increasing, as well as the new strands headed our way, are alarming to me. The lack of space in our classroom to appropriately space students apart is a problem. Are the restrooms going to be cleaned hourly? How are all the students going to be spaced appropriately in the cafeteria without masks? What will recesses look like with so many kids back at school? How are kids to class in a timely manner, given the number of temperatures needed to be taken? Are we adequately prepared for all the families that may be choosing DL when we reopen? What are we going to do when the entire classroom needs to be quarantined when a teacher becomes ill and we have no substitute teachers? What about the cafeteria? If our cafeteria workers become ill due to the increased number of students crowding in the cafeteria, will we have enough sub-employees to cover? While hospitalizations have somewhat stabilized, death and transmissions are still increasing daily. Will we be ready? What and how are we going to implement these safety measures? Who is going to oversee that safety measures are followed by all? Will you share the reopening plan that is in the works with teachers soon? I encourage you to continue seeking information from sources that are from the medical and educational community. Many are in favor of going back to school with stringent safety measures in place. Some have already and have noted their mistakes and successes. February midwinter recess. Please don't remove this vital break from the 21-22 school year and beyond. It is a welcome break, a necessity for students and staff alike to get some much needed time away from school, regenerate, and be with families. Students and teachers come back refreshed and ready for the rest of the year. Compensation. First and most importantly, I'd like you to know that I love my district and my OCESD family. I've been a teacher for OCESD for 21 years, and I'm a product of our school system. I attended Ofer School from 3rd to 6th grade, where I currently teach and have for the past 21 of my 27 teaching years, Central Middle School, and finally Las Plumas High School. I have emailed you previously to tell you I can honestly say I do not remember a time when our OCESD teachers have been treated with such lack of respect and disregard regarding our compensation. Unfortunately, there's been no resolution. It makes me so sad to feel how morale as well trust have declined over the past couple of years. I don't like feeling that way and know my co-workers her also valued friends feel the same. This year has been trying for teachers. We have all risen to the occasion, worked harder than ever, making sure that our students receive an excellent education, loved and taken care of emotionally. What we are asking, what is deserved, fair and just. There are so many aspects to our job, and we do an amazing job of tending to all of them. Our jobs are difficult, amazing and wonderful, but difficult. We all put our hearts into our classroom. Other districts around us have managed the money to be able to properly compensate teachers and make them feel worthy. I would like to ask OCESD to do the same. Respectfully, Lori Maturino, 5th grade teacher, O for School.
Thank you, Spencer. Jessica, you have your hand up.
I had a last minute message from a teacher. I quickly sent it to Backpack, so I don't know if Spencer received it yet.
Just bear in mind, it is part of the rules and regulations that all emails have to have first and last name, or else they cannot be read into the record.
I sent it over to you, Spencer.
Okay. I've just refreshed my, okay, I have it now. I will open it up. This letter is from Mrs. Lephart, who is a teacher at Ofer Elementary. We've talked a lot about it, and we think the best situation for all students in classrooms at school Monday through Thursday, with a distance learning day on Friday for DOJ training, planning, prep, and Google Meets with individual students for intervention and assessment. We also feel that we would want and need very clear, explicit directions and protocols for classrooms, playgrounds, and cafeteria safety. Too much has been left up to personal judgment because the district did not give us much direction at all for what should have been consistent across the site in all OCESD schools. Here in our pod, we painted our own distance dots on the sidewalks and some build their own plexiglass barriers for student desks. There needs to be a clear plan so teachers don't have to do any guesswork to keep kids safe. If I can add one more thought, I believe it would be ideal if we could get the compensation situation resolved ASAP. I suspect that the animosity that many teachers feel towards the district for failure to fairly compensate their teachers have created a resistance. Teachers who feel appreciated will always do more than is expected, which we always do anyway. Teachers know that children should be in school full time, but the negative relationship due to failed negotiations and disrespect have a negative impact on the teacher enthusiasm for a full return. It has been an ugly situation, and the salary agreement would most certainly take an element of defeat out of the equation. Mrs. Lephart, Ofer Elementary.
Thank you, Spencer. We have 2 points that are not applicable to the next discussion session. I thought maybe we could answer. Perhaps an update on our transportation situation and an update on the February break. I don't know. Are we still having a February break?
So, Madam President, I believe the, just want to double check that under new business number 9, we have the adoption of the 21-22 school calendar is on the agenda, and we can discuss that item at that time. And also the transportation issue we can discuss during our reopening segment that's coming up.
Point that I would like to go ahead and open up the discussion session concerning regarding school programs and learning models.
Thank you. So at this time, I would like to let the public know that I have shared with the board the results of the surveys that we have sent out the past 2 Mondays to our parents, and they have the results of that survey. And if the board so desire, they can share that with the public or have me share the results of that survey. I can't answer transportation questions that our board president brought up. And if we were to change models, we would have to look at the transportation. Our transportation model right now still follows the CDC guidelines, which limits the capacity of the buses at this time. I will say for the record that our buses are not being utilized as much as they have in the past. When we went back October 19th to a hybrid model, we asked parents to provide a lot of their own transportation, which they have greatly helped us with that. And so we've been able to completely be compliant with the busing and the regulations as far as spacing every other seat on the bus. I will share with you that we do not have as much capacity as we've had in the past, not only due to the CDC, but also ensuring that we have enough drivers, because there's been concerns regarding COVID and having enough bus drivers, which we contract with the high school district. But we would keep the same routes. If we were to change models, we would keep the same routes that we have currently, and we would be making no changes to the current transportation that's provided right now. And at this time, I'd like to either answer any questions that the board may have regarding the reopening, or turn the time back over to you, Madam President, to continue the conversation as a board to discuss this very important topic of reopening or staying, reopening in traditional model or staying in the hybrid, and discussing all the things that we've discussed and heard from parents and staff this evening.
So let's go ahead and just get a quick summary of what we discussed last time, and then include the surveys that were put out so that we have just kind of an update of what kind of poll numbers that we have, what interests, where the interests lie, and then maybe get some informed decisions from our healthcare workers, both mental and physical.
Okay, so last board meeting, we discussed the fact that we have many parents who are have inquired about the possibility of returning to a what we consider more of a traditional 5-day-a-week program. At that time, we discussed the possibility of returning after spring break, which is around the middle of April. We then discussed a lot of the things that we, concerns, questions, things that we needed to do. The board had asked me at that time to survey staff, to survey parents, to get a better sense of where we're at, and numerous other questions that have been brought up to me at that time of the board. And subsequently, since that time, I've been asked many questions by our board to seek clarification and to try to bring some clarification to some of the questions that have been brought, and some of those new questions also that have been brought up tonight. So at this time, I want to share some of the results of the survey. First of all, we asked classified staff, which is a CSEA staff, and we did a staff survey in conjunction or jointly with our CSEA leadership. And it was a simple question of, do you support a traditional return this year, or do you support we stay in hybrid for the remainder of the year? Classified staff, they supported a traditional return at 52%, and those who support a hybrid model for the remainder of the year was 48%. OETA, which is the Teachers Association, surveyed their staff and then subsequently shared that data with the board and myself. The results of that were 25% support a traditional return this year with distance learning, and 75% support we stay in hybrid for the remainder of the year with distance learning. We sent 2 surveys out to parents. We realized that the first one may have confused some people, and so we subsequently sent a second survey this past Monday, which we received a lot of feedback from. And at this time, we asked parents to rate or give their first choice of which program. And we gave the 3 programs, which are a traditional return, a hybrid return or staying in hybrid, and a distance learning option. 72% of parents, their first choice on the survey was to support a traditional return this year. 10% supported hybrid for the remainder of the year as their first choice, and then 18% supported distance learning for the remainder of the year. In the previous week, when given the choice of a traditional and distance learning program, 82% of the parents would return to school and 18% would remain in distance learning. Currently, we have about 70% of our students in the in-person hybrid model and about 30% of our students in distance learning or independent study at this time, or about 660 students in distance learning or independent study. I was tasked by our board president to seek out guidance from Butte County Public Health. I reached out to their director, Danette York, and Butte County Public Health has no problem with us going back to a traditional setting as long as we are following the guidelines of the CDC. Desks and chairs can be 4 feet apart. 6 feet apart is optimal. Children do not get as sick as adults, but are still carriers. And those are all direct quotes from Danette York, director. I also looked into the district COVID numbers. We have had 82 confirmed COVID cases in our district, with 59 being student cases, and that actually went up 1 student today. So 60 being student cases and 28 are staff cases. According to our district nurse, RN Terry Woods, who does the vast majority of our tracing, none of the confirmed cases were traced back to our school sites. And the vast majority were confirmed to be home-based transmissions. Social distancing of deaths. Recently, the CDC and some of the health organizations have changed some of the stances of the 6 feet of social distancing and desks to read that 4 feet of spacing between desks and chairs for classrooms. With that being said, with 4 feet of spacing, most classes in our district can have between, or on average, of 18 to 20 desks in a classroom. With 6 feet of room around desks, we can hold about 12 to 14 desks on average. Not all of our class sizes are the same. Some of these class sizes could house a few more, and some of them would be less. It depends on the size of the classroom and also the furniture in the classroom. I also shared with our board today the breakdown of how many classes have more than 20 students currently enrolled in those classes versus how many of those classes have over 20 students in those classes, to give our board a better understanding of where we would be at if we were to go back to a traditional model and how many changes we would need to make to classes. I will not go into that data at this time because I think it will be rather lengthy and harder to understand if I just give a verbal layout of that. Research studies. I have reviewed 5 different research articles, mainly coming out of the American Association of Pediatrics, regarding the transmission rates in schools. I've been working on this research with our board president, and schools have a very low transmission rate in those studies of about 3 to 5%. On our surveys, we have asked parents to give us feedback, and I will read some of those common questions from parents. Will masks be required? And the answer is yes. Regardless of the model that we have for the rest of the year, whether it's hybrid or traditional, masks will always be required. Will transportation still be available? And the answer is yes. Will transportation routes change? To my knowledge, all the routes that we currently have will still be the same, but they still will be limited based on the CDC guidelines and the transportation guidelines. Additional questions are, how will we be able to maintain 4 to 6 feet of social distancing with larger classes? The answer is, we may need to hire some long-term subs to drop class sizes. We also may need to look at many other different processes to help us maintain as much distance and as much social distance as possible in our classrooms. I shared some additional ideas with our board this afternoon via email. I do not have those in front of me at this time. But I also want to share that currently with our surveys, about 10% of our students, with 30% of our students on distance learning, our surveys reflect that about 10% of those kids would want to come back into a traditional setting if that was an option, which then may allow some of those teachers who are on distance learning to come back to in-person, which could help mitigate some of our classes that have over 20 students in them. A parent asked, will I be able to volunteer or walk my kids to class with a program change? And the answer is no. We'll continue to ask parents to drop their kids off and then leave campus as we are trying to keep our cohorts and all those other pieces in place. Will we keep our same start and end time of the day? And as of right now, yes, those are subject to change as well. When will changes start, if we have any changes? And that is yet to be determined, which program that we'll decide on and when that, and if and when those changes happen. So at this time, again, is there any other questions that I can answer for the board?
Spencer, this is Pamela. I have a question. Do you know at this time if we are going to participate in state testing? Is it going to be required? And if it's not required, are we going to participate?
So the short answer to that is yes. And I'll turn some time over to Janet if you'd like to completely answer that question.
Yeah, so we have a range that we can do our state testing, and we are paying attention to what's going to happen in terms of the opening. But there has been a range that the State Department allows us to get the assessments in. So what we're doing right now is we are looking at getting our testing started after the beginning of April in case we have movement change, so that we need everybody settled and staying in the same place in order for us to do our state testing. So if we are to return in April, then we would begin our testing after that April startup date. We'd wait a good week, maybe a week and a half, and then get started on the testing. So we're kind of holding to see what the decision is so that we can really define what our window range is going to be for the testing.
Thank you, because I think that I'd heard that there was some concern if we chose to go back to a traditional learning situation, that there was some concern that that's going to take some time to get used to, and then to overlay testing immediately onto that would just create even more. So anyway, just sort of getting an idea of what we were thinking about for testing. Thank you.
Yeah, and Pamela, we can actually shorten the window of how long they test. So I would agree with the teachers that we do need to give them 2 weeks to get in, get settled, figure out what they're going to do, and then we can start the testing.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Spencer, I have another question. Do you see any differences between, and I'm just going to break it into 3 buckets, K, that is a lot of, learning to socialize and how to, this first opportunity, maybe the first opportunity to really be in a structured situation, then 1 through 5, and then 6 through 8. So if we made a decision to come back, are there any differences in those 3 sort of buckets? And I guess of how they learn and how they, and to be safe, or is it, do you see them as all the same?
Well, we certainly, when we look at those kids, there's definitely some developmental differences and their ability to be compliant with mask wearing and their, having a full understanding of, what's going on. And certainly our older kids understand why we're wearing masks versus some of our, our TK and K kids. Generally speaking, the CDC and the California Department of Public Health, their guidelines are pretty much a blanket across, all grade levels. I did hear a number of emails talking about, our guidelines and our plans, and we have done a lot of work, and we can continue to work to educate our students and our staff of what those requirements are, the things like temperature taking and wearing of the mask. And we do have desk dividers for all of our classrooms. We have hand sanitizer all over campus. We have hand washing stations and, a lot of the other things. Now, those are pretty easy and pretty straightforward. We do know that some classes and some kids are a lot more compliant than others. Others are not. So we are continually working with our kids and our staff to stay compliant and try to maintain that safety. I will share with you that like our general population, some are more strict with those guidelines and others are a little more relaxed based on their comfort level. Regardless, we still need and want to do all we can to stay compliant. The biggest issue that we will have if we do change our format to a traditional reopening is going to be our social distancing. In some classes, if we were to combine our A and B hybrid schedule, we would have no problem maintaining that 4 to 6 feet of social distancing. Other classes will be well over 20 students, and we will have to look at modifications of that classroom, maybe of that. We might need to divide some of those kids to other classrooms, which, like has been shared this evening, creates disruption and disrupts continuity and consistency for kids. And so there's no real easy answer to this. We know that kids need to be in school, but we also know that there's a lot of obstacles and a lot of safety concerns that we have to consider when making such an important decision. We also know that our surrounding districts have made varying choices. Gridley has been in more of a traditional model since October. Chico last week decided to stay in hybrid for the rest of the year. Durham has chosen to come back in more of a traditional model on March the 1st. Palermo has an action item regarding the possibility of them starting sometime in March. Thermalito is, like us, discussing the matter and taking more of a wait and see approach and continuing that dialogue as we are tonight of all the mitigating circumstances to help us make a good decision. I will tell you that as we look at everything that we have on the table, it's going to be absolutely a lot of work to get us in compliant. But I also hear our parents and hear emails and get them on a regular basis of how much of a struggle that the hybrid can be for some families. We are concerned that we are losing kids, but I will share with the board and the general public tonight that Additionally, we have done some, I have some additional data to share tonight that I've asked my staff to compile, and one of them has to do with attendance. In a typical year, we average about 93% average attendance on a daily basis, meaning about 7% of our kids are out on any given day on average. And of course it fluctuates, but that's our average. Right now, though our attendance is much more complex and we are still gathering some of that data, we are currently running about 89% of our kids attend either in-person, hybrid, distance learning, or some other form of independent study. So our attendance has not dropped off too much this current school year. Additionally, we have just completed our iReady diagnostic, and we are, and just even before this meeting, Janet ran off that data for me, and we are not too far off where we were this time last year, which tells me that our students are learning and our teachers are absolutely teaching. I think it's absolutely astounding that I was very surprised that we haven't dropped off more. I thought we'd see a big drop off, and we know that COVID started and we left school and went to a distance learning in March. So we did have some learning lost last year, but I expected our drop off to be more extreme with the different models that we've had this year. But to the credit of our staff, to our teachers, to our students and our families and parents, we are holding our own when it comes to academics. And so when the board is looking at this in totality, I want you to know that as a district, we're looking at everything in totality to try to give you as much information as possible to make the best decision possible with as much information as possible. Because I know all of our board members, as I speak with them personally, and I speak with you personally, that everybody has given this a great deal of thought, and it's no easy answer, but I want to do my part as a superintendent to keep you as informed as possible. And right now, I think we've given you as much information, I think, as we possibly can give at this point in time. And certainly as people ask questions, whether it come from staff or parents or from the board, we are ready and willing as a cabinet to search out that data, search out that information, search out that research to continue to educate everyone involved. So is there any other questions at this time?
Spencer, I have a question.
Yes.
Of the Teachers Association surveyed and the 25%, 75% division, you said that 25% are in favor of a traditional model with distance learning. Can you explain what that looks like a little more?
Sure. So regardless of the model that we change to, or if we keep the hybrid model in place, distance learning, it will always be an option for the rest of this year for our families. Okay. So whether we go to traditional or stay in hybrid, we will continue to offer grade levels that are going to have distance learning teachers. Now, we may have, based on numbers and depending on where we go, we may need to make some changes to that. But we do know that at least 18% of our families want to stay in that model, and we are saying that they can stay in that model.
And that's a 2 days in the classroom, 2 days outside on distance learning model.
No, let me clarify that. So the hybrid is going to be just like we have now, which is the AB schedule, 2 days on and 2 days off. When I talk about distance learning, I talk about kids who are on distance learning five days a week.
Okay. Understood.
Other questions or other comments from the board?
Spencer, we do have some more emails that have come in that are pertaining to this discussion.
Okay, so I have one right now that has been sent by a parent. Her name is Shelley Murray. My one point of concern that hasn't been mentioned is the unfair split of learning time the Monday, Wednesday kids get versus the Tuesday, Thursday. I did the math, and since October, the Monday, Wednesday kids have had 19 hours less time in class than Tuesday, Thursday. Shelley Murray. And because this is a discussion item at this time, I would like to go ahead and let Shelley know, Mrs. Murray know, that this has been brought to me, brought up by Mrs. Anthony, our board member, last time, and we are well aware of the hours and the disproportionality between the two, and we are brainstorming how we might be able to remedy that. We haven't been able to come up with a solution to that based on a lot of different factors, but we continue to work on it.
Andrew, are we taking into the account the questions that are being answered in the chat area?
No, there isn't a chat. There's just a Q&A. If people wanted to have discussion at a public board meeting, they need to raise their hand or email backpack@ocsd.net. We're not entering the chat in the public record.
Okay, thank you.
I do have another, a couple different emails. Kristen Wilson, who is an American history teacher at Ishii Hills Middle School, has asked how many surveys were completed and what is the total number of households in our district. In our first survey, we had 736 total surveys or total surveys completed in our first survey. And in our second survey, we had 256 completed.
Sharon, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I have a lot to say. Bear with me. I really value the input that's been shared by all the staff members that have come forward, the teachers and classified staff, and the parents. I think it's important that we listen to everybody's perspective because we're all coming at it from different perspectives. And then we have to look at the big picture before we make a decision. Ultimately, we all want our students back in the classroom in person, as we know that this is the best option for most of our kids. But after doing my research and listening to everyone, I strongly believe that maintaining our hybrid schedule as we are doing now for the remainder of the school year would be the most prudent option for the health and safety of all of our staff and students, both physically, mentally, and emotionally. Although our current model of hybrid model with the distance learning option, it's not optimal. We know it's a struggle. But our staff are making it work. Our teachers are making it work. They have adapted their processes and they've bent over backwards to do the best they can to serve their students because we know our teachers care about their students and want to provide the best education for them. The change was difficult for them between last March and what they're doing now, but they're on a roll now. They've figured out how to make it work and it's working now. So if we choose to move to a full-time in-person instructional model right now, we're going to see even greater obstacles and challenges, and things are going to be flipped upside down for our teachers, and they're not going to be able to do the work that they know how to do. There are significant concerns, health concerns. It's still unknown if the vaccinations prevent individuals from carrying and sharing the virus. We still don't know the effectiveness of the vaccines on the new, more virulent strains of the virus that are spreading right now. There's still no vaccine for children. We know that kids are less likely to get it or even have milder cases, but they can share the virus with others that they live with and other people in the community. We are a part of our community, and whatever happens in our schools happen in our community as well. And so it's part of our responsibility to help make sure it doesn't, to limit the spread in the community. There are reports of a significant increase in the PMIS, the Pediatric Multisystem Inflammatory Syndrome, that kids who previously had a mild case of COVID end up weeks later in the hospital with a serious different illness. And we don't know why. It hits some kids and not others. There's just so many unknowns with that. The long-term health effects are still greatly unknown, but are very concerning for many doctors and scientists. It's not just that we don't know, it's that we don't know, and they are very concerned because it could be significant long-term health effects. I have restriction concerns that it's impossible to maintain the social distancing in all of our classes. Dr. Holton mentioned that you checked how many have over 20, and every school site has classes with more than 20, some significantly higher than 20, and with many classes, many teachers that have more than 20 students. It would be almost impossible to socially distance kids in the class. There's a greater difficulty in maintaining social distancing in common areas. Everyone's going to be arriving and leaving about the same time, more and more students. And it's already difficult for staff to maintain social distancing. And if we add more students in and larger cohort groups, how are we going to be able to manage lunches and recess and bathrooms to make sure everything is cleaned in between cohort groups to keep them safe? There's only 8 weeks of school left after spring break. It is just too close to the end of the year to make a significant change. It does take 1 to 2 weeks for a class to relearn a new norm when you're starting something new. You need that ramp up time. And then the last week of school is a challenge. So, that does only leave about 6 weeks of solid learning time, but the teachers then have had to readjust what they want to do and create new lessons and figure out this new modality. It's just too much of an upheaval. It's too chaotic. Teachers would have to drastically modify their teaching models, adding to their trauma and stress that they've already had for the year. And then we're adding changes to the students, adding to their trauma and stress that they've already had. We need this continuity. We need some consistency. What's working now is working. So let's just finish out the year with that. I know substitute teachers have been very short. It's been very difficult to find them. And if we move everyone to full-time in-person learning, we're going to have a higher need for substitutes. Dr. Holton, you mentioned that there's more substitutes that are willing to come forward now that the vaccine is available, but we need to have those lined up now and ready to go. I have heard that there have been classified staff subbing in classes when they're desperate. And that is out of compliance with Ed Code. That's my specialty. I know that. We can't have that happen as a potential. We need to make sure we're able to protect our students and our staff by following the rules appropriately. And substitute permit holders can't even sub for more than 30 days at a general education classroom. We have 39 days left. How are we going to bring extra subs in? They have to be fully credentialed to be able to do that. And for special ed settings, they're limited to 20 days. Adults are more directly impacted by adverse COVID symptoms. So we keep talking about how kids don't get it that bad, but our teachers and our staff are then a greater risk for serious health effects. The more teachers and more staff who get sick and have to be out, the more our students will suffer by not having that consistency. Bringing more kids into the classroom face-to-face means more staff need to be in the classroom face-to-face. And so this is less of an opportunity for teachers with high risks and young children at home to remain teaching distance learning. Many distance learning teachers fear returning to face-to-face. And it's going to lead some of them to have to choose between the job they love and protecting themselves and their family. I know a lot of teachers across the state have quit because they didn't have the option to stay in distance learning. And I'd hate to lose the great teachers that we have. I have had several people close to me who have had or currently have COVID-19. And I've heard some very frightening stories with long hospital stays, longer recovery times at home. I'm lucky that I don't know anyone personally that has died from COVID, but nationwide, we've had 467,000 people who have died from COVID, and they keep dying every day, including in our county. The current trajectory of COVID cases in our county is slowly decreasing, and it appears to be decreasing in our district as well. We didn't have, it appeared maybe 0 cases last week, 1 case this week. That's great news. And that's really exciting, but that tells me that what we're doing is working. So why change that? We're finally seeing some success in mitigating this virus. But that doesn't mean that it's time to let our guards down. People are still getting sick. People are still dying at an alarming rate, and we need to remain vigilant in following those COVID-19 restrictions, even though we are seeing a decline in cases, so we can prevent another resurgence. Now is the time to maintain the status quo, to continue to protect our staff and our students the same way we've been doing it throughout the year. So if we maintain our current practices, we're going to increase the likelihood of returning to school full-time in the fall in a safe manner without significant changes. So bottom line, I strongly recommend maintaining the current modalities of hybrid and distance learning for the remainder of the school year. Thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you, Sharon. So obviously we have a lot of logistically questions that we have to answer, a lot of questions that we have to answer that will make us feel a little safer concerning the situation. I too looked at the statistics of last week. If my memory serves, we had 30 cases per day, and to get out of purple tier, we have to have less than 7. So we have a long way to go before we get out of purple tier. I don't believe that we should be opening if we're still in purple tier, that we need to be at least in some other color of the rainbow. So at this point, I want to just make one more quick round of questions, comments, or concerns. Andrew, Spencer.
So I do have one more comment to read into the record, if I may. This is from Mark Wisterman, who is a community member and community owner in the community. Given the results of your survey, you have your mandate to get the children back into school full-time. If you do not stand firm against the naysayers and do the right thing, you will continue to destroy the academic progress of those who are paid to serve. My guess is that your testing will show that the vast majority, if not all, of the students are far from what would otherwise be acceptable as a proper grade level. Again, Mark Wisterman, community member.
Thank you, Mark. I agree. The importance of having a structure moving forward, to have a target to work towards, to have a goal to focus on, is going to be our greatest proponent in getting back in school. It's going to solidify what we have to do, how we have to do it, and when we have to do it. So at this point, like I said, we still have, this has been a great discussion. We've gotten some questions answered that we didn't have answers to last time. We have no new questions to work on. So at this time, I'd like to close the discussion.
I have to say it.
Go ahead.
How do we bridge the gap between the 72% of families in our district and the 25% of teachers? That is a complete disconnect. Teachers want one thing, parents want the other. Parents have the kids enrolling in our schools, and the teachers do not agree. We are at a great divide. It's not working. The number that that is crazy to me, but understandably so, is the 10% of parents do not or want to stick with hybrid. Like,
Yeah.
that means 90% of parents or families do not.
So just to give a little background, a lot of you know I work for our local big box retailer. I work in the online grocery pickup. I have, and my family has had at least one case. We haven't been tested. My local work cohort has had 4 or 5 cases just in my department alone. I have 2 school-age children. They are older. They're 14 and 16 now. I get it. I have coworkers who have children that go to our district, and I have one dear friend of mine who works the graveyard shift, and he comes home from work first thing in the morning. He takes the kids to the computer, and they do the whole computer school day together, the dad and the 2 boys. And then he goes to bed, and he gets up at 8 o'clock at night, and he goes back to work. And so, I mean, I know parents that would almost push me to become mandated reporting. I mean, because of the possibility of neglect that these parents have to subject their children to because they have to go to work. I get it, but at the same time, and then there's the flip side of the coin. I mean, I am exposed to COVID 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. I wear a mask every minute of every day. So I'm not going back to work for a week. But that being said, so I get the exposure situation, and there are 2 sides of this coin. There is the luxury of having the opportunity to have a job that is distance, but at the same time, as I tell my customers when I go out to help them because they can't come into the store upon penalty of death, that I have the privilege of strength, maybe not the luxury, but the privilege. So where do we find the middle bound? It's like I told Spencer today, there are some people that have been swimming in the pool the whole time, and there are people that haven't had the opportunity to swim in the pool, and this pool is a little bit scary to get back into. That being said, we're still in purple tier. There are still a lot of biological and microbiological unknowns about the virus that we have to consider, and a lot of logistics that we have to consider. I mean, Central Middle School's got 6 classrooms that are completely vacant, that we could move the excess students and use some of the substitutes in those classrooms. But again, it's a logistical issue. Bill, you have a question. Bill Groen.
I think Jessica was ahead of me.
Go ahead, Jessica.
I just carrying on with the data and the divide that concerns me greatly. The families that are enrolling their kids in our schools are the one where we per head, per student is enrollment.
Right.
Okay. The 72% of families want to be enrolled in full-time school, and 25% of teachers want to teach in full-time school. I understand both sides of these. I've read every single email. I have read every single logistical concern of teachers, but I'm also a parent who is in the thick of doing distance hybrid learning.
Yeah.
I am one of the ones where it's not working for us. Some people have it very much, it's working well for others. It's not working for so many. If their children are checked out, they could care less. The idea of going to school is like on the computer is like not interesting,
Why?
So anyway, that's what I had to say.
Bill, go ahead.
I agree quite a bit with what Jessica had to say. I mean, there are some things not 100%, but I do agree with what she did have to say. I think that as I understand the issue, we're talking about April 12th for a return to school date. Is that correct?
Say that again, Bill.
Is the
We
potential
can
return date
hardly
April
hear
12th?
you. That's the dream.
That's 60 days away. I mean, we're making a decision
Yeah,
to
that's
do
too much.
that for something 60 days out based on what the assumptions and the things are today. I think that we should probably plan and move forward and then be nimble enough to,
We're not making.
if in 60 days the
Mhm.
circumstance is different or much better, then move forward with our plan. But I think if we don't start planning now, there's no hope of doing it at all.
Exactly. To that end, as we continue to make preparations, I believe that we do have a summer school option that we're looking at. Spencer, do you want to ask your question and answer mine?
Yeah, I'll answer your question. Janet, our assistant soup in charge of curriculum and instruction, is currently working on a summer school plan. We have received or will be receiving funds to do an extended school year for general education students or for summer school. In our survey that we put out on Monday, we also asked about summer school and the different types of models that parents may prefer. We are looking at several different models, and I won't get into a lot of detail at this time, but we're looking at a morning program that would focus on the academics, and then an afternoon program that would focus on more of the social emotional things that we could do outside, things that would be more directed by a similar program like our after school program that we currently have right now. Those would be paid programs. We're also looking at some other activities that we might be able to provide students in the afternoon with the focus in the morning of, let's say, 8 to 12 or something like that would be focused on academics. I do want to, I do have one more community comment that I'd like to read into the record, and then I have one more comment for everyone. This is from Melanie Petty. Hi, Mr. Holtum. I do not appreciate Sharon's negativity. She thinks she knows what's best for our students when she doesn't. Our kids are suffering with depression, not having any normalcy. We are 2 full-time working parents. It is very hard for us with this 2 days a week. We feel that we are doing the teacher's job. Thank you, Melanie Petty. And this is not an action item. We are not voting on this this evening. This was a discussion item as to, and my goal tonight was to share as much objective data with the board and the community, but specifically the board, as much as possible, so that we're making decisions based in data-based decision making and not on all the various emotions that are tied into the situation, because it is highly contested as we've seen and as we anticipated. To address Bill Agron's question, as far as we're looking, if we were to look at April as a return, that's 2 months away from now, and I will continue I will continue to plan for and prepare for the possibility that we could or we may return at some point during this year. As it's been pointed out, doing the things that we need to do to get back into school, some things will need to be changed. And I will continue to look into those changes and work on those changes if and when we ever decide to go in that direction. I think it's very clear that we have a number of different opinions in this, but I will continue to work hard to look at that and work towards that So when and if the board decides to move in that direction, we will be that much closer to that end result. I do think that it's important that I will continue to, with the blessing of the board, continue to make this a discussion item every month. And if our board so chooses to call a special board meeting to continue this discussion, I'm happy to accommodate the board. Thank you. Bill?
I just wanted to, how I feel about this is I think that if we have 72% of our customer base saying that they are interested in this occurring, that we should seriously consider that and move that direction. My concerns circle around when we walk into August next year and there is another reason or situation where we can't return, and it just kind of just goes. I think we need to start planning. We need to figure out those contingencies to get our children back into the classrooms. I'm not a proponent of the 4-day work week either, because, you know, we start it and then all of a sudden the 4-day work week becomes what is normal. 5 days a week is what is traditional, as I understand it. I would like to see us go back to that. I don't agree with Sharon's comments, but I appreciate them, because I believe when we bring many different perspectives to a conversation, that we come up and are able to formulate the best possible plan for everybody. You know, I understand what Sharon's saying, and, you know, I have a different perspective of the world as far as how I'm seeing it. Doesn't mean I'm right, and it doesn't mean that Sharon's wrong. It just means that it's different. One day I'm going to meet her. She seems like she's a very nice lady, and I look forward to that. But I do want to tell everybody listening, and Sharon, I do appreciate your comments. So please, you know, make us stronger by providing those. Make us think, push us beyond where we're not comfortable. And that's all I got to say about that, like Forrest Gump.
Thank you, Bill. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and move on to our actions.
Sandra?
Go ahead.
We got another email and 2 people in the gallery who would like to speak. Do you want to address those, or?
Yeah, just a fair warning. We'd like to try to end this meeting sometime before tomorrow. I think
Okay.
everybody would understand that.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read the email. The email is from Shauna Butler, 7th grade teacher at Ishii Hills Middle School. Her email reads, just clarifying that the first survey only received 33% responses from families. Second survey only received 13% responses from all district families. And so also we have 2 people in the gallery who want to speak. Faru, I'm going to call on you first. So Faru, go ahead.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted. I was going to give the same number Shauna Butler just gave about the percentages. I was actually wondering why nobody on the board corrected that, and if in the future, if you can correct it when somebody makes a blatant numerical, I'm a numbers person, a numerical mistake. I like data and I like numbers. So if somebody, data can be very misleading. So that'd be wonderful if we could correct that in the future. The other thing I wanted to bring up is I didn't have a question answered. I too am extremely concerned about student emotional well-being. As people who've known me my whole life, that's my goal. And it hasn't been addressed about the distance learning students. And in my experience, and asking around for those family members who are really struggling to get their kids online, it is so hard for those kids who are distance learning 100%. And I'm very concerned about those students being 100% distance learning. I'm not sure if because Jessica, Miss Anthony, you asked the question about clarified distance learning, what that meant. And for those students, they don't come in at all. And I'm wondering if the board has numbers on those students, those particular students who are distance learning. What is their attendance like? What is their growth like? I know that they're suffering because we know that students need to be around others. What you're putting out there does nothing to address those most needy students. And that question wasn't answered about the distance learning kids as well. And one last thing to Mr. Legrone. I don't know when I have ever worked 4 days a week, ever. Most days it's 7 days a week. There's times I've only come into school one day or sometimes not at all for weeks at a time when we couldn't come in. But I have worked many more hours, often getting 2 to 3 hours a night for weeks on end. And I am not alone, not in this district by far. So just to clarify that, it is not a work week, it is an in-school time. Thank you very much.
All right. And someone, let's see, someone who's listed as Mello. So I'm not sure what your full name is. So if you could please introduce yourself first. Okay. So go ahead and unmute. And please introduce yourself, Mello.
I'm sorry, my name is Mrs. Mello, Leanne Mello. I'm an employee at Ofer Elementary School. I'm an RTI. I wear many hats at Ofer. I've been there for 6 years now. And my family has been a part of Ofer for 16 years. My oldest is 20. And I just, I don't think I need to speak for the parents. I think that the 70% that showed that they wanted to return speaks for itself. I agree with what the gentleman said before. If we have 70% of our customer base that wants to come back, we really need to seriously look at this. Fru, I think that what he was speaking about was an email that I sent in and an email that another teacher sent in about thinking about possibility of 4 days, Monday through Thursday in class, and then a Friday distance learning model. I have family in many different states, and they're all running on this model. They've been back to school since August, and it's working for them. It's not easy, but it's working, and their children are getting a full education. I have a son that's in 4th grade, and his teacher is doing a very well job with their math lesson they're getting every day. But for the most part, he's getting half of an education, half of what when he's in class. I think that the parents are not necessarily trusting the district that we're going to be coming back. Like, we're afraid if we don't take the chance now and we don't work hard to come back now, what are we going to be told in August and September? Like what Sharon said, she's concerned that that this is going to stick around. Well, the parents are concerned too. And what are you guys going to tell us in August and September on whether or not we're going to be able to come back full time? All of my family in the different states, I don't understand why it's so different here in California with their COVID. Every state is back to school. My family in Utah is back to school. My sister works for Gridley School District. They're back to school. They're making it work. Their teachers are on board. Their administration is on board. Their kids are getting an education, and we just want an education for our children. Distance learning is not an education for our children. Dr. Holton, you had mentioned the iReady data. I feel like all of our data with testing is a little skewed. Kids are taking tests at home. When we took a look at the testing rate from the beginning of the school year to when they just did an update, there was a big change. And you know, if parents are at home and they're helping their kids make it through their testing, the data is definitely going to be skewed. I don't believe that our kids are reaching grade level. I think that's pretty much what I wanted to say. I didn't prepare anything. I didn't know that my statement previously could have been more of a statement. I thought we were going to have questions answered, and I didn't know if that type of a learning model had crossed the mind of the district or the board. And lastly, I just want to say, you know, we appreciate all our teachers. I'm friends with all of our teachers. But as a family and as a mom, we want our kids back in school. And I think that that we should definitely be listened to by the board and the administration. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Bill.
I just would like to take a second and clarify my comment. My comment was not directed and was misconstrued as some sort of an attack upon the work ethic or the work day of a teacher. When I say a work week or something like that, I'm referring to the children who I would like to see do a 5-day week in class. I know how hard teachers work. I've listened to them. I've heard them. I've watched them. I've seen them. You know, I'm very happy with the work ethic that our teachers have. And I apologize if I offended anybody with that comment. It was not any sort of commentary on their work ethic.
Thank you, Bill. I'd like to thank everybody who inputted their ideas, their comments, their concerns. We have a lot to work on. So at this time, I'd like to move on to the action session and invite any public comments on the action items that are on the agenda. Do we have any questions or concern concerning the consent agenda, the action items? Andrew, Spencer, do we have any interested parties who have anything to say about the action items on the agenda?
Not that I can see at this time.
No, I don't see any at this time either.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or concerns about the consent agenda items for board members? Hearing no questions or concerns, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I make a motion, we approve the consent agenda as agendized.
Can I have a second?
I second it.
Thanks, Pamela. Jessica, how do you vote?
Agree.
Pamela, how do you vote?
Aye.
Bill, how do you vote?
Yes.
Sharon, how do you vote?
Aye.
I vote aye on the consent agenda. The items on the consent agenda are approved. Next, we'd like to move on to the adoption of the 21-22 school calendar. There was a question that I had concerning this next, bless you, this next week, Spencer.
Please.
Are we going to continue having that week off?
Yes, I know, I believe the high school, based on some of their changes of schedule, they changed their schedule for next week, but we are following our calendar as approved last year, which is Friday is a holiday, Monday is a holiday, and the rest of the week off. And the rest of the week, our school is not in session.
Thank you. There was a question concerning transportation, whether or not there will be impacts with the elementary side with regards to what the high school has decided. There will be no impacts on transportation for us. Just we won't get on the bus when they come around.
Madam
Go ahead.
President, so this agenda item is for the 21-22 school year.
Next year.
Yeah, this is for next year.
Yeah.
And the high school district has typically set the calendar for the Oroville proper, including Thermalito and Palermo and us and Bangor. And we've kind of followed that just for the continuity of the town, because, you know, a lot of us share households. Now, the board this evening can approve this calendar, which which does not have the days built in the February break in the middle of the week. And so you would have, you know, that Monday and that Friday off, but not the middle of the week. As you know, we've had people who've brought it to our attention that they would like that. And so if the board were to move forward with an alternative calendar, it would then be my responsibility to work with the high school transportation, which we currently contract with, and mitigate those days. Because what would need to happen was that I would need to, because those would be non-student days, we would either need to start school 3 days earlier or get out of school 3 days later, because we would have to ensure that we have the 180-day school calendar for students. But we would work with the high school district to work through that process, if it be the direction and at the request of the board.
So just for clarification, next year's calendar will have us attending school for the entire month of February, save those holidays, those legal holidays. And if we wish to have that week off, then we would have to arrange and pay for transportation either on the beginning of the school year, sometime in the middle of the school year, or the end of the school year, in order to make up to total those 180 days that were required.
And that is correct. I do not believe at this time that we would incur any additional charges, because our contract, you know, and we negotiate that and work with them every year, but we're still receiving 180 days of transportation from them, regardless of our calendar. It does make sense, and there is some savings there when we are on the same days, but 3 days, I think we could mitigate. If there's many more, then that would be more problematic and may create issues and may subsequently cause us to have to look at our contract. But as of right now, if the board made any changes, then I would reach out to the high school district and work through that process with them. And so I just want to let the board know that regardless of what direction you go, I think we'll be able to work with you.
Okay, so then should we table this so that we have an opportunity to see a different kind of calendar that accommodates for if we should choose to have that week off?
That is at your discretion, Madam President. I have reached out to the high school district. We are in the middle of working with them to do a transportation study. And so I am open to either direction, and I can do either one just as well.
Madam President, I have a couple of questions before we table.
Certainly.
One is, I would like to find out, you know, what the cost would be for if we went ahead and took that February break. So it looks like it's 3 days. What the additional cost would be. And then the second question is, have we always, has it sort of been our tradition to follow the high school calendar? And I think maybe you've already answered this and said it was, Spencer. I mean, that's my understanding, but I just want to make sure that I understood that correctly.
That's my understanding as well. So it's just kind of been tradition. and just always kind of worked out that way. And I think we've had this this Friday week off for many years now.
Yeah, and I mean, and I understand the part of it is, you know, once you have, if we just had the older kids out, so the students in high school were out, you know, I mean, families may choose to go ahead and, you know, pull their children for those, I believe the 3 days, I think it would be, or 4 days it would be anyway. So you know, anyway, I think, Madam President, you asked if it could be tabled. I think I'm pleased to support that. I would like to know, once it comes back, what the cost may be in order to provide busing for either the beginning of the year or the end of the year to make up those 3 or 4 days.
Okay, I will reach out to them again and try to get more definitive answers. We have had this conversation, but I don't at this time have any definitive answers for you. Like I said, we're in the middle of a transportation study with them, looking at the totality of things, but I will try to, I will work very hard to come back with more definite answers regarding that contract for next board meeting.
Now, Spencer, sorry, Pam, or was that Sharon? We're not going to run up against any deadlines as far as the calendar is concerned?
No.
Okay.
You as a board have that prerogative to set the calendar. And to my knowledge, there are no education code or regulatory codes that require you to do it within a certain a certain time frame. So I don't think if we set a calendar by March that we will have any issues with that.
Comments, questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to add in there, I think many years ago, one of the reasons why that was added is because there was an attendance issue with families planning vacations. And so if they had a Monday or a Friday off, they would take the rest of the week. And so by giving them the week, then they were able to get the attendance back at the beginning of the year, at the end of the year. I don't know if that was effective or not, but I know that that was one of the reasons they gave when it switched.
Excellent point. Thank you. Jessica? Jessica, did you have a question?
No.
Oh, okay.
I could comment that I think that it should just remain in place and we can work around it.
Okay, so then without any further objection, I'd like to go ahead and table new business on letter A, the adoption of the 21-22 school calendar for our next meeting. And move on to letter B, approval of the MOU for OETA 2021 distance learning extension.
Madam President, so this is, I believe, the second or third time that we have brought this memorandum of understanding to the board. Each time you have approved it, and it was for the usually for the duration of 2 to 3 months. The reason we did it on a 2 to 3 month interval is because we were kind of just going with the flow of COVID and the pandemic and trying to keep ourselves prepared to allow teachers to distance learn. This memorandum of understanding has worked well for us this year. It essentially gives teachers the ability to work from home or in the classroom and have some flexibility regarding COVID-19. And it's my recommendation that in one of our latest sessions, we just decided to extend it throughout the rest of the year, which allows teachers that are specifically on distance learning to have flexibility in their workstation, whether from home or from the school site. A lot of our teachers exercise both options, and it's, like I said earlier, seems to be working well, and we've had no issues with it up to this point.
Thank you, Spencer. Any comments or questions by the board? Not hearing any comments or questions, I'd like a motion to approve MOU with OETA for 2021 distance learning extension.
I move that, this is Pamela, I move that we approve the MOU between the district and the OETA regarding distance learning extension.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Jessica, how do you vote?
Approve.
Pamela, how do you vote?
Aye.
Pamela, one more time.
Oh, I'm sorry. Aye.
Bill, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Sharon, how do you vote?
Aye.
I vote aye. The motion carries. Nomination for CSBA delegate for subregion 4B, Butte County. Do we have a nomination for California School Board Association delegate?
So we have a nomination from our last meeting, a nomination for Sharon Nielsen to serve as a delegate from Butte County, Subregion 4B on the California School Board Association Delegate Assembly for the term of April 1, 2021 through March 31st, 2023. Ms. Nelson is a member of the Board of Trustee of the Oroville City Elementary School District.
I make a motion, we approve.
Can I have a motion?
Bill
Second.
made a motion.
May I have a second?
This is Pamela. I second.
Bill, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jessica, how do you vote?
Yes.
Pamela, how do you vote?
Yes.
Sandra, how do you vote? I vote aye. Thank you, Miss Sharon. I will email you some information that may be important and helpful for you in the future. So keep an eye out for my emails. Last business and finance review of CalSTRS audit report. Andrew.
So just because we love getting audited, it's what we do. That's gonna be our new slogan. CalSTRS decided to audit us this winter and fall. They did an audit that covered, I think, 4 or 5 years of our activity. Like all CalSTRS audits, they come in with they seem to have something in mind and some people in mind that they're looking at. So we had a few findings, 2 or 3 on 5 different items. Some of them are very minor or very very specific types of findings. Most of these findings related to the same people. So overall, I think the CalSTRS audit resulted pretty well for us. We didn't have any ongoing or current items that we were currently doing. There were just a couple of anomalies where certain things got reported in a way that was contrary to the way they wanted it done. So I just wanted to share this with the board. I know you guys want to see when we get audited. So this is our CalSTRS audit. I feel like the work that was done by our human resources and payroll department is exemplary. And I feel like this is a very good audit from CalSTRS. CalSTRS comes in with a lens of, the more they can disallow for people, the better. So they're always really looking for stuff and turning stuff over. So I felt like it was a really good audit. All things considered from CalSTRS. So do you have any questions about the CalSTRS audit?
I also want to share that, like Andrew shared, none of them were ongoing and very specific and things that we could address and fix and we've addressed those. Correct, Andrew?
Yeah, there was nothing to fix. It was more of stuff that had happened in the past that was one time, sort of these special case scenario type things. One of the things that's difficult about sharing a CalSTRS audit, this is the public version that doesn't have any names or descriptions of the positions because that would, give away what it had to do with. So you have to keep that part confidential, but it is a good audit, in my opinion.
Alrighty. Do we have any questions or concerns? about getting audited from STRS, which seems ominous.
Well, it happens.
And
You know,
I hope we don't ever have to experience this again.
well, give them a couple of years. They'll find something.
Yeah, I know, right? Are there any real ramifications legally or financially moving forward?
There were a couple of immediate corrections we had to make, but those have all been dealt with.
Okay.
So-
Is it like if you forget to file your taxes and they penalize you by fining you?
Yeah, it's like that.
Oh, did they fine us?
I think we had a couple of little things where they wanted fines, and there was one I think we were going to appeal. It's one of those things where you're playing the game in their system, and they know what you've done wrong, and they're just sort of waiting for their chance to come. They are.
I know the
It's just kind
feeling.
of a fixed thing. I don't know. I'm very cynical about CalSTRS.
So how much did they fine us?
No, I don't have that off the top of my head. It wasn't anything too significant. Looking through to see if they.
As this is an informational portion of the agenda, we can go ahead and move on if there are any other questions or concerns to our last item on the agenda, approval for request of unpaid leave of absence extension.
Thank you. It is recommended that the board approve an extension to an unpaid leave of absence request due to personal health needs for certificated employee number 0156, effective February 24th, 2021, and continuing through the remainder of the 2021 school year. The employee is not entitled to any compensation or district paid benefits during the term of the leave. So this is an ongoing medical issue. Up until and through February 24th, this employee is, I believe, on sick differential, and from February 24th through the rest of the school year will be on unpaid leave.
And we have a substitution, a long-term sub for that individual?
We do.
Okay. Do we have any questions or concerns? Motion to approve?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
A second.
Sharon, how do you vote?
Aye.
Jessica, how do you vote?
Yes.
Pamela, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Bill, how do you vote?
Yes.
I vote aye. The motion carries. I hereby call the meeting adjourned. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Thank you for coming, all of the participants and visitors. It's good to hear from you all.